and I'm going to touch on a few issues. I'll touch on the US move from direct military occupation to neo-colonial rule in the aftermath of signing two agreements, SOFA, which is the status of the forces, and the long-term strategic framework agreement. Also, I'm going to talk about the withdrawal of some of the US troops from Iraq. Then, more important is I'll talk a little bit about the gradual Iraqi social changes in relation to the implementing of the US policy and in specific the counterinsurgency in Iraq. If we have time at the end or during question time, I would like to talk a bit about the Iraqi resistance, because it is almost the ignored, its role is ignored in most of talks, and it's almost a taboo to mention the word resistance nowadays. In November 2008, under the Bush administration and Maliki's regime, a US-Iraq two security agreements were signed, the status of the forces, SOFA, and the long-term strategic framework agreement. The first one, SOFA, deals with the issue of legal immunity for US troops and dates for a full withdrawal of the US forces, while the second agreement focuses on shaping future cooperation on fighting terrorism, counterinsurgency, political, culture, energy, economy, environmental, and other issues of what's considered to be between practice and mutual interest between the two countries. It's worth mentioning here that, first, currently US forces, international consultants, private security, and mercenaries are still immune from the Iraqi legal process. CPA Order 17, which granted the immunity, was not amended or abolished by the various Iraqi governments after the Provisional Authority was dissolved. Second, Iraq is still governed, and this is very important, by Article 7 Security Council, and maybe Dr. Hasib would like to mention that has better knowledge of that than myself. Third, both agreements violate Iraqi sovereignty. Fourth, the partial withdrawal of US troops means moving from the direct military occupation to neo-colonial rule, evoking similarities in the minds of most Iraqis. This is almost the same situation. It comes to the mind of Iraqis that in the aftermath of 1930 agreement to consolidate the British colonial rule on Iraq. What is the military reality now in Iraq? I'm going to quote General O'Donnell, the ex-commander of US forces in Iraq. The reality, he tells us, we will be at 50,000 inside of Iraq. There will be 94 US bases left and up to 65,000 contractors, along with 250,000 Iraqi army and over 500,000 Iraqi police. Furthermore, there will be 3 what's called enduring presence posts. They are diplomatic postings along a 300-mile stretch of disputed territories where forces loyal to the Kurdish regional government and the conventional Iraqi army have come close to shootouts. Not forgetting in this whole picture, of course, the US Embassy, a neo-colonial fortress in the heart of our capital, Baghdad. So what are the US forces going to do, and what are the contractors doing in Iraq? I'm quoting again General Adorno. We are training, advising, and assisting them, meaning Iraqis. We continue to support our provisional reconstruction teams and the United Nations for Civil Capacity. And we conduct partner counter-terrorism operation. That's what we do today, and that's what we're going to continue to do. Training is an act described by the Washington Post as the following, I quote, "Of all the bloodshed in Iraq, none may be more disturbing than the campaign of torture and murder being conducted by US-trained government police forces. US forces continue to provide convoy security teams and will also provide quick reaction forces and security for contracted vehicle recovery teams." In short, we're going to have the US forces in Iraq, but they're going to concentrate on specific missions, and these specific missions are the special operations. Special operations, we have no information available to the public about them. And also they're going to have the quick reaction forces, and they're all providing support for special operations by Iraqis as well, units located throughout Iraq. So it is, in a way, it sounds like more dangerous than the direct military occupation, where you can see the forces and you can target them. Now they are leading many attacks daily, but using the Iraqi army, Iraqi police as a shield. So they are the joint forces attacks and special operations together. The main features of Iraq today are: there is no government. After 8 months, they only managed to have one parliament session or two, and they only managed to choose the prime minister and the president and the speakers of the parliament, and they all the same faces except for the speakers who moved from one place to another. So it's a chess game, or changing the chairs here. There is increase in terrorist attacks related to inner political conflict, random attacks on civilians and detainees, absence of the judicial system, targeting minorities. We all heard about the church recently, the massacre in the church, forced migration, forced selling of homes and land to create ethnic and sectarian ghettos. I'll give you an example. In Baghdad, there is an area called Karrada. Karrada is under the control of Al-Hakim family and Al-Hakim party. It used to be the Supreme Council for Islamic Revolution, changed now name, but it's the same entity, and they are offering millions of dollars. Actually, the prices of land and houses in that area is more now expensive than in London itself. So they're offering money, and they are forcing people to leave as well, if the money is not incentive enough for people to leave. And that area also shared by Christians. So that could be one of the reasons to think about, to look into why these things happening in churches in specific areas, and not to accept as a face value that Al-Qaeda is attacking of the army of Islamic, this group or that sectarian group. We have to question what's going on in reality. Also, features of Iraq now: walling, the walling of cities and walling of Baghdad itself, and communities, in order to control the populace and consolidate the sectarian divide. Mushrooming of US-funded NGOs, women NGOs in particular. The US Army, as part of counterinsurgency policy, is co-opting women by providing contracts directly to what he calls this new strata in Iraqi society, Iraqi women, businesswomen we're having now. So they are given millions and millions of dollars in direct contracts to provide services to the US Army. And then, obviously, there is also the airstrikes continuous from Turkey and Iran to the Kurdish region, and no one is doing anything. In general, Iraq now, Iraqis, 7 years after their liberation, or 8 years, are the victims of a brutal, degrading, and life-threatening system installed and sponsored by the US and Britain. What's called government is isolated from the people and unable to provide what any government should: security, basic services, and dignity. With no real power, it is consumed from inside, like an old wooden ship eaten by